I decided to take a bit of a risk for episode 2 of Circuit Spotlight here on the channel because of course in episode 1 we featured a massively popular circuit in the most popular racing series here on the channel, Gran Turismo, talking about midfield. It doesn't get much more iconic within Gran Turismo than that, and of course in that initial episode I mentioned that I like the idea of talking about tracks which were not just in Gran Turismo but other games as well. So at the risk of scuppering my own chances with the algorithm, we're moving into the Forza series for Maple Valley. Now for those who have played Forza Motorsport in particular, because of course this track does not appear in any of the Horizon games, fairly obviously, this track is an OG original circuit. So think of it in Gran Turismo terms as being like a deep forest, a trial mountain, perhaps most notably an autumn ring. That's the kind of vibe Gran Turismo fans on the channel should imagine when it comes to the kind of nostalgia, the kind of fandom and the kind of love which a circuit like this will have within Forza. And also of course the kind of very, very common use in career mode. There are loads of events on multiple variations of this track in multiple Forza games from day one. And speaking about taking it from day one, this actually appeared from the very first Forza game, Forza Motorsport 1. It was in Forza 2, Forza 3 and Forza 4, but then they threw a wrench in things by, after 4 iconic games and such a great run, removing it from the series after Forza 4, and then it didn't come back until Forza Motorsport 7, and then it has of course continued into 2023's Forza Motorsport as well. Now during that journey there were a couple of different notable points wherein variations and changes in the track were made. You've basically always had 3 primary versions. You've got the full course, the full reverse version, and the short course. Now the full course is only 3 miles long anyway, so much like Autumn Ring and Deep Forest etc, it's a pretty quick lap, 4.83 kilometers with 12 turns. The short course is 1.15 miles, so it really is a short course, very, very Gran Turismo-esque. I might even say that the short course feels even more like Gran Turismo, 1.85 kilometers long with only 5 turns, and again that one is used a lot in career mode, especially in lower level events. But 2 of the notable changes which were made during its history were actually in Forza 4 and Forza 7 in particular. In Forza 4 they added a bridge to the design of the track, otherwise it remained mostly the same. Even the time of day and the vibe kind of stayed pretty consistent through the first 4 games. But then in Forza 7 they made probably the most significant change, which was a wet version of the circuit. Now as I alluded to earlier on, it is of course a fictional course, as you can kind of tell, again very Gran Turismo style. It's set of course in the USA, and in terms of where in the US it is fictionally set, it seems to be in New Hampshire potentially, and then around Forza Motorsport 2023 based in Vermont, which is pretty close anyway, that borders the state. An interesting little behind the scenes nugget which could have some basis in reality, and of course take this one with a pinch of salt, is that according to at least a couple of forum members from the Forza side of things, Turn 10 themselves are, or at least were, I'm not sure if they still are, based near a town of Maple Valley in Washington state. So it might, I guess, have been some kind of inspiration there. That one is a bit up in the air though in terms of whether or not there's any truth in that, so I wouldn't necessarily take that as gospel, but it could have at least inspired the name, who knows. In terms of approaching the track itself and the kind of driving experience you'll have, it appeals to virtually every kind of car in the game, from the slowest stuff to the fastest stuff, and the reason why it's so good is because the track is all about flow. This is one of those courses where not only are there very few, if any, corners where you really slow down, you can always keep a really nice flow going, even in what basically would amount to a couple of hairpin turns, but they're so long and flowing that it doesn't really feel like that. You can also of course use that to your advantage in something like a prototype or a GT car. At the same time though, it's still prime for early gameplay, because for slower cars, for less powerful cars, the lap itself still isn't that long. 3 miles even for the full course is nothing really. For me, I've definitely always preferred the normal layout. In terms of the short version of the track, like I said, I like it well enough. It definitely has a Gran Turismo vibe, and ironically the short course has a much harder turn relatively shortly after the start line than the full course, wherein you turn left instead of following the normal route, and then you have kind of a double 90 degree before coming back on yourself to go back up toward the main hairpin. So the short course doesn't interest me quite as much. It's quick, it's, you know, short and sweet as far as tracks go, but for me, I love Maple Valley. It is definitely one of my favourite tracks from Forza, certainly one of my favourite, more specifically fictional circuits, and I would argue easily one of the most iconic, for some people probably the first iconic original circuit to come to mind when you think of Forza original tracks. That though is where you come in. So much like with midfield and with every episode still to come, I would love to hear your thoughts and stories. Is it one of your favourites? Is it one of those tracks which comes to mind straight away, as it does for me? But then ultimately, if you're a much more recent player within Forza, of maybe Forza Motorsport 2023 perhaps being your first one, what do you think of the track? Being brand new 2 for you, of course you don't have the nostalgia, so you can kind of approach it with a more clear lens, if you will. So do you like Maple Valley in particular? That is something I'd be very interested to hear. And for Gran Turismo fans who have decided to watch anyway, well, thank you for that, and of course we will return to more Gran Turismo tracks in the very near future. But for now, thanks for watching.